Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. So today's viewer requested question is Dylan Minet, I'm not sure. Hi Cap, could you recreate this Harrier incident in DCS to see where the pilot went wrong and to test how survivable the incident is in DCS? Here's some footage of the incident. Let's go and have a look at the footage. Boom. And stop. So that is RAF Harrier crash, Kandahar, Afghanistan. So this isn't a live, this is a live war area basically. Now, out of interest, the pilot was fine, and we believe that he now or has since been the leader of the Red Arrows display team. So he's obviously a very experienced pilot. Let's just go a little further back and just listen to those engines again, because what the engines are doing is going to be critical for this. You can clearly hear that they spooled up to maximum power. But I just want to try and ascertain the flap position, because the flap position is going to be important as well. So I'm just going to have a little look through. I don't think the flaps are fully down in stall, which is what we'd expect. And the nozzle positions are going to be really hard to see. The nozzle positions appear to be directly down. If you see front nozzle there is the only one we're going to kind of get a chance at seeing. Let's maybe open that up a little. That nozzle there I think is pointing down rather than backwards. I don't really know, but that is going to be my best bet. Or about maybe 70 degrees kind of down, if you know what I mean. Whereas 90 degrees would be fully down. The flaps, I think we would see them. Bang. Quite an impact. The flaps, if we get a little shot of the flaps. The flaps appear to be about 30 degrees down. As far as we can see, they're not stalled down, like 65 degrees down. I mean, they could have been hit up by the impact. I don't think there's any way really of knowing, and we haven't got any other footage. So that's what we've got there. The next thing is to look at the loadout. The loadout's critical with the weight of this vehicle. This is a GR9. We've got an AV8B in DCS, but for all intents and purposes, they're going to be pretty much the same as far as I'm aware. Written off damage beyond repair, which you can pretty much all agree that was a shredded bent frame. After an uneventful 2-aircraft sortie, the landing back at Kandahar, Afghanistan, was held off by 10 minutes due to busy circuit. So that's probably something to bear in mind in terms of fuel. When cleared to land, ATC requested an expedite landing and runway clearance due to heavy traffic. So what that means is basically wanted to land as soon as possible and get off the runway as soon as possible, which does make a difference. When you're hurrying things, there's always going to be increased danger that comes with that. The wingman landed first due to low fuel, but received a hostile missile alert and released flares, presumably on his kind of final approach, which is interesting. Now, that's not going to be too unnormal. Remember, this is an active war zone, and you've got hostiles with SA-18s and whatnot outside the perimeter of the airfield. Zulu Golf 478, which is our ship, turned onto finals, was too short. So he turned onto finals too short. Now that's an interesting thing. Why would he turn onto finals too short? Because, almost certainly because his wingman had a missile report, and so therefore this guy didn't want to extend past the boundary of the airfield, which is what you'd normally do, and then come back in, go over the boundary and land. So he wanted to land really steeply, basically, is what he's saying. So instead of a 3 degrees landing, approach like a kind of normal aircraft, he's going to come belting down. Very dangerous thing to do, obviously, especially if you're heavily loaded. It was too short and 6,500 feet higher than normal. So he was up much higher simply because he didn't do his big extension and slowly kind of reduce level like that. Instead, he's coming straight down from a much higher altitude. Throughout the approach, the rate of descent was too high and hover stop was selected in an attempt to correct this. I don't know what hover stop actually means. I'm guessing it is what it is. I'm guessing he literally wants to come to a full stop in the air before hitting the ground, before touching down. Just bear in mind that again, very dangerous if we've got a heavy Harrier. Easy at an air show if you've got low fuel and no stores. If you're loaded up with bombs, very dangerous. throughout the approach. And the other thing is the rate of descent was too high, so that is something that's going to be critical when we're coming to look at this in our recreation. At 180 feet from the ground, I'm guessing, full power was selected, but the tail struck the ground 30 feet from the threshold. So he actually crashed essentially before where he intended to land. The outriggers and main undercarriage collapsed, as did the nose wheel when the aircraft pitched forward. The underwing stores, which we've got bombs, rockets, recce pod, targeting pod. Right, so those outer things are actually probably small GBUs, I'm guessing. Then we had rocket pods, then recce pod, then targeting pod, and drop tanks, which I'd guess were empty. So we need to model our plane with all of that. Caught fire as it slid along the runway for 4,000 feet. During the slide, the pilot turned the aircraft away from a formation of 4 aircraft waiting to take off, then ejected as it slowed down. But before it came to a stop, fire spread to engulf the whole aircraft. So he had the option of ejecting before he hit the ground. He probably knew he was going to hit the ground, as we'll see in our recreation, but he waited for the smash and steered his plane away. So for my relatively small hours in the AVA-B, I have come across this before, and that is where, if you're landing in a panic, it is very tempting to do this high angle approach. However, it's incredibly dangerous, because once your vertical speed gets too high, it's very hard to arrest that, especially if we're low power on the engines, and there's no report of engine problems here, or if we're heavily loaded, which he is clearly heavily loaded. Bombs, rockets, recce pod, probably empty fuel tanks, and a targeting pod. Even when he goes to hover stop, which we've determined is 82 degrees nozzles, which is kind of what we saw in the video when we had a look at it, even with the Pegasus at full power, it's very hard to slow that VS down slow enough to come to a hover or come to a stop before the runway, and he just ran out of time. And the interesting thing is there's actually no way out of it, because once he's got no forward motion, the plane is not actually flying, it's kind of just sinking and relying on the power of the Pegasus to slow it down. What a lot of you are saying is, well, just put your nozzles back and fly off like an aeroplane. There's just too low speed. It's probably going 40 knots or something. It's just the plane's not flying. It's kind of semi-hovering down at the moment. So we're going to have a look if we can get out of this situation, but almost certainly we can't. So it is a bit of a widowmaker from that point of view. What caused this? Human error, human panic. He didn't want to get shot by a Stinger, a Russian Stinger outside the base, so he just put it down as quickly as he could. And once he was sinking at such a high VS, then that's it. It was always going to go down. So here's our example. Here is our Harrier. It's going to be 8,000 feet ASL, which is about 6,500 feet higher than our normal circuit height. As we said in the document, we're going to be at 260 knots. Our aircraft is going to have our targeting pod, 2 empty fuel tanks on the inner pylons, 2 Lao 68 launchers here, and we've got 2 GBU-12s as best we can ascertain from the video. Okay, we're in the cockpit now, and you can see the first problem already. We're so high, we're 8,000 feet, and look at the runway there. We've got to dive to our left and land on the runway without going feet wet, basically, to represent staying within the boundary of the airfield. It's an incredibly dangerous thing to do. Just to show our controls, we've got roll left, if you look at the bottom of the screen, roll left and right, stick forward and aft, rudder right and left, throttle up and down, and nozzle positions 0 degrees, so back, and 99 degrees, so that is 9 degrees forward. We'll have our landing water on. We'll have our flaps down to a stall position of about 62 degrees, or we will do when we're a little further along. We're pretty sure that he had his flaps fully down, so that's going to merge into that base turn. Everything's going to have to be pretty vigorous to get this to work, so I'm going to come right down on the nozzles now. Flaps are going to go fully down, as down as I can get them with the airspeed. Gear's going to come out. Going to make the turn now into stall mode for the landing. Flaps are just to show you the configuration of the bird now. We can see that our nozzles are 83, near enough 82 down for hover stop. Our flaps are 62 degrees down, so this would be the configuration that he was landing at, with his flaps down like that and his nozzles down like that. And you can see we've got near enough the same ordnance that he had. And what we're going to look at is our VSI, our sink rate, if you like. We've currently got a VS of 2,750 feet per minute sink rate, which is obviously deadly. So we've got to arrest that and try not to let that get out of control. It's also represented by this downwards line here, which will go positive if we were actually climbing. Stand by. So I've got to get onto this runway at the threshold without going outside the base. Note our throttle is relatively low because We've got to sink at the end of the day. If I went full throttle now, then the plane would just go upwards. All the time, looking around, looking for any possible threats. Here we go. Airspeed is not too bad. 130. We can start coming back on that airspeed now. Watch the airspeed, which, as I say, is up the top left there. That's falling now. The plane is no longer flying. We're hovering on the nozzles. Gonna have to start feeding in a bit more nozzle and a bit of backstick. Plane's starting to become a little unresponsive now. Get that nose up so we can. We don't want to use too much runway up, so we're going to keep that nose up. Sink rates high and start feeding on the power now. More power. Nose up. More power. More power. Full power. And we've managed to get down to 60 knots or thereabouts in actual forward speed, and we've put power on enough within time, gone to full power within time, that we can arrest our sink rate down to 700 feet per minute. But just about going to be landable. I did what he did. I came down too hard in the end there. Now I'm okay. I didn't have quite as bad sink rate as he had. So we just about survived that. In real life, that would probably be damaged landing gear, but you could probably, use the airframe again. Let's try that again now with a bit more of an expedition. Remember, he was told to expedite from the control tower, which means get down as soon as you can. And I was not trying to get down as soon as I can there. I was taking it easy because I'm a bit of a Harrier noob. So let's go now with in mind that we want to get down as soon as possible and as quick as possible. Right, so off we go again. Let's get the bird set up. This time, we're going to go in with a bit more piff and vigor, so we're going to get down as quickly as we can so the baddies don't get a chance to shoot at us. Flaps down, safe for gear down. Nozzles are going to be forward for this part. We can go into stall now, I suppose. Okay, so I'm just going to chuck the bird in there. Let's get down as quick as we possibly can. The problem with this is, you see, we're getting so fast, we're getting over 200 knots. Gets us down quick, but look at our sink rate, 9,000 feet per minute. It's going to be very hard for us to... nozzles are going back now into our stop hover. We get our flaps down. Just about on radial. We have to whack backstick here to start slowing the bird down. So, backstick, feed in the power. Power on, more backstick. It's not going to work, it's not going to work! Bang! Okay. And exactly as we saw. See, not too dissimilar damage as well. It's a good damage model on this aircraft. You can see the front of the nose is smacked off because I came in back first and banged my nose on the ground there. So it simulated that. My nozzles were in the same position as his were. My flaps stayed down where his went up after the incident. All of my ordnance has been ripped off. I think his ordnance stayed on. Otherwise, that was a pretty accurate representation. It was what I imagine he would have done. And it's simply, again, the fact that he wants to get down as quickly as he possibly can. So the base turn, the diving base turn, is going to be as quick as he can. And then he wants to put all the power into that Pegasus and try and stop it. But if you mistime it just slightly, because it had a bit more weight on, maybe there was a bit more wind, maybe there was some turbulence, whatever, I don't know what was going on exactly. Misjudged it, and he's hitting the ground at 40 knots rather than 4 knots. It's a smashed Harrier, really. Simply that. Really easy thing to do. Really dangerous plane to drive, really. I hope you enjoyed that, and see you later.